host Devonne Cornelius giving you his take on the biggest stories happening in governance today. Got something to say? Let's hear it. Give us a call at 869-465-2555, Monday to Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. One solid hour of in-depth analysis of the machinery that makes our country tick. The Edge, cutting into the matters at hand.
The views and opinions expressed by participants and callers during this program are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation, its management, or sponsors. The station accepts no responsibility for statements made.
Of ZIZ Radio comes a political talk show like no other. The Edge, with host Devonne Cornelius giving you his take on the biggest stories happening in governance today. Got something to say? Let's hear it. Give us a call at 869-465-2555, Monday to Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. One solid hour of in-depth analysis of the machinery that makes our country tick. The Edge, cutting into the matters at hand.
Get ready to ignite your Tuesday nights with a show that's as educational as it is entertaining. Welcome to Pleasure Pulse, your weekly guide to the world of sex education. Join Roma every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. exclusively on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. It's the perfect way to spice up your midweek routine and get answers to all your burning questions. Whether you're looking for relationship advice or curious about the art of intimacy, Roma's got you covered. Pleasure Pulse, every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. only on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. Don't miss out. Your sex education journey starts this Tuesday with Roma as your guide. ZIZ Radio, the pulse of the Eastern Caribbean. Proudly uniting, leading, serving, and entertaining.
Good morning, St. Kitts and Nevis. You're listening to The Edge here on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I'm your host, Devonne Cornelius, and today I am joined by Ebony Brandon, and we will be zeroing in on the Prime Minister's address. Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, he made an address last evening focused on the Sustainable Island State Agenda and the Sustainable Economic Expansion and Diversification Seed. Of course, we'll be opening the phone lines a bit later in the program to hear from you, your views and your points on the statement or the address made by the Prime Minister last evening. Good morning, Ebony, and welcome to The Edge. You're no stranger to The Edge, as you were able to sit in for me just the other day. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and guess it's great to be here. It's always good to be at ZIZ, but it's so strange being on this side of the microphone. You know, I'm usually one doing the interviewing. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because it's really important. The sustainable economic expansion and diversification strategy that the government would have announced quite some time ago. Now, you and I have sat in press conferences where this was prioritized, and a number of areas highlighted in that national address, 47 minutes and some seconds, if I'm not mistaken. We all sat and we listened, and we've had some hours now to process, you and I, and hopefully we can have a conversation about the key points. I made some notes about what really stood out to me, and like you said, I'm hoping to hear what the public thinks about it, because it was really a lot to take in. A lot of promises made, a lot of areas of development highlighted, and so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
The Prime Minister gave a very optimistic picture of St. Kitts and Nevis's progress in terms of what has been done over the last 2.5 years, where we are now, and where we intend to go. He focused, of course, on water, national security, education, housing, and these different pillars in terms of St. Kitts and Nevis's development. I want to begin firstly looking at the actual framework of the Sustainable Island State Agenda. We recently hosted a Sustainable Islands Summit, where leaders from across the globe came together, and leaders and experts alike came together and look at practical solutions, practical ways of addressing the climate crisis, and how do we as small island developing states respond positively to these changes. How do you feel about the address in general, in terms of whether you think it was responding well enough to what we are currently facing as small island developing states?
I do. And more than that, when I listened to it last night, and I've had an opportunity since to actually read it, because sometimes hearing things and having an opportunity to digest it when it's in front of you, very different. What sort of stuck out to me is that St. Kitts and Nevis has really, under this administration, championed itself as a leader in the Sustainable Island State agenda concept for small island developing states. And I think what we saw more than anything else was the outline of what the Drew administration's roadmap is for the development and growth of this agenda. So it's all great to hear about the 7 key pillars. I think we're all familiar with them, or at least that catchphrase, these 7 key pillars that build the Sustainable Island State agenda. But what is it that goes into it to ensuring that this Sustainable Island State agenda is actually going to happen? And more than that, I think people get tired of hearing what you're going to promise to do. So it was satisfying for me, for example, to hear some of the, because I mean, the thing is with data and statistics, it's verifiable. You and I, as journalists and media practitioners, we can go out and check and see if this is the case. So when I'm hearing that the desalination plant for the Bastille area is near 75% complete, when you tell me for a fact that there was an 11% increase in job registration, for example, and I'm assuming that this is through the Labor Department in 2025, in just the early part of this year, these are indicators of growth, development, a thriving economy. A lot of people are under the impression, because you don't see immediate results, that there is nothing being done. Because let's address the elephant in the room. People are saying that things are slow. The thing is, things might seem slow when you're not directly benefiting. We traditionally have lived in economies that are boosted by construction. And so we're looking for the start of the hospital, which has already begun. We're looking for the Bastille High School, which has already begun. And as these progress, then the economy in turn will start to benefit from these things. Jobs will improve. The spin-off from that, the people in the cook shops, the service providers, the businesses who are providing materials to all these people, and so on. People who have to acquire specialized training to work in the development industries afterwards. Some of these are not immediate results. It's not instant gratification. But am I seeing that there is a groundwork heading in that direction? Yes. So I would say, based on what I heard last night, we're heading in the right direction. We're going to have to hold the government to the fire to ensure that there is accountability, and that when we go to these press conferences, we continue to remain on the Prime Minister about the progress of these projects. But yes, I was satisfied with what I heard.
But you made a very interesting point when you mentioned, benefiting directly. And I thought about it as well in terms of whether people fully understand what the Sustainable Island State agenda is about. And for some, it may seem like political jargon, so they may not fully understand, and for others they may tell themselves, okay, I'm not benefiting directly, so is something really happening? What am I seeing? Now, based off of what the Prime Minister mentioned in his address last evening, there are a number of things in that address where you can go, whether you're a journalist or not, and verify for yourself.
Absolutely.
And you can see whether these things are happening, where we are and where we intend to go. Now, Ebony, I want us to look at geothermal energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. He mentioned that geothermal exploration is progressing, with drilling expected in early 2026. Let us zoom in on how critical renewable energy is for St. Kitts and Nevis's economic reliance. And the reason why I want us to talk about this is because it affects the small man. It affects you and I in every way, shape, or form when we're talking about energy costs. Every day, people talk about the cost of electricity and how expensive it is. If St. Kitts and Nevis is to produce geothermal energy, then you can begin to see a reduction in energy costs. And so we understand how important it is for geothermal exploration. And the Prime Minister also noted that with geothermal exploration, it will not only benefit St. Kitts and Nevis, but it would benefit other islands across the region, because you can also talk about selling or transporting some of the energy to other Caribbean islands. And so it is good for St. Kitts and Nevis and good for the Caribbean region, SIDS in particular.
I want to suggest to you there's a little bit more than that, because although we as consumers think of energy as flipping a light on and having access to electricity or something as simple as that, it affects our goods, our services, everything else that relies. If there is transportation involved in anything related to our business, there is going to be an energy impact. And so for St. Kitts and Nevis to emerge as a significant source of geothermal energy, it really is going to be very transformative, not just for the energy sector, but for every other area that you can imagine, because this will mean a reduction in the cost of living for everybody. And as you said, if we have a cheaper, clean, renewable energy source, it's not just beneficial to, because I think it's like about 2 gigawatts or something, I don't know. The entire country, including Nevis, uses, like, we use a fraction of, I think it's about 40. They say we have the capacity to do a quick Google search and tell me what the exact figures are. But what St. Kitts and Nevis has the capacity to produce versus what we consume, negligible, which means that the margin for us to generate a profit from it is huge, and it's going to affect our education. We talk about the orange economy very often as an emerging area where people are now paying a lot, and people, the creative industry and that sector, very important to that is where everything related to travel, transport, everything will change for us. And so yes, it was good to hear that happening. What is admirable though is that we say we're moving towards actual drilling in 2026. Now, when we think about where this conversation with respect to geothermal energy started under the Douglas administration, I'm not that old, so maybe it started before that, by talking about what I remember. It started in earnest under the Douglas administration. It did not advance very far. We all know the dynamics why, largely in part because government feel that their job is to do one thing, and whichever side of the opposition you happen to stand on. Unfortunately, some people's job in opposition is simply to oppose for the sake of opposing. So there was no real advancement of it, because we all know if we want to be serious about this, Nevis is the best place to tap. Now, there are reserves in St. Kitts, but not nearly as lucrative or beneficial as the ones in Nevis, which exploration and research has already been done into. So the fact that we have gotten this off the ground, and he's saying in the speech last night that we are now beginning to entertain bids, it is a clear indication that we're moving in the right direction. So and then what I'm also looking at with the geothermal and the promise that the drilling is going to begin next year is this. Other promises have been made, and I like to look at what you say versus what you produce. We were told the desalination plant was going to start at a particular time. I think there was a slight delay, but nothing so far off base that anybody was frazzled about it. The thing is, it's on target. It's happening. It is the same thing with the hospital. Groundbreaking was done and there was much hoopla about it, but are we seeing that something is being done? Absolutely. Is it being done at the speed that people want it to be done at? Because I don't know if they feel like it's a 2-bedroom house we're flinging across the road from Ross. That is not the case. It takes time. Same thing with the Bastia High School. Definite promises were made with respect to the Bastia High School, the timeline, what was taking place, and where we stood with that project. And now that has begun as well. So I am positive, based on history, that this one will also move in that direction.
It is 11:18, so we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. The numbers to call are 465-1977 or 1903 or 662-8674, which is our cell number. We'll take this break, and we'll be right back.
The Caribbean
Caribbean's greatest summer festival, Antigua Carnival 2025, July 25th to August 5th. Get ready for music, mass, band, flex, and non-stop vibes. Mark your calendar and don't miss a single show, a single fete, a single unforgettable moment. This is more than Carnival. This is the ultimate experience. Follow the vibes. Instagram at Antigua Festival Official. Facebook at Antigua Carnival. Vibe responsibly. Antigua Carnival 2025. It's a vibe.
It's a vibe, come alive for me.
The Caribbean's greatest summer festival.
Want to get away? The Uwali Beach Resort is calling your name. Whether you're dreaming of a romantic escape, a family adventure, or a peaceful retreat, Uwali has it all. Relax in comfort, enjoy fresh local and international cuisine, and soak up the sun on the best beach in Nevis. Take advantage of our staycation special, exclusively for citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. Ready to book? Call us at 469-9735 or 662-9735. Email reservations@uwalibeach.com. And don't forget to use promo code ZIZ. Your escape starts now.
From the 869 area, penetration your radio. It is ZIZ.
Welcome back to The Edge here on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I'm Devonne Cornelius. Thank you for joining me in the program for today. And in studio with me is Ebony Brandon as we look at the national address made by Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, last evening, which focused on the sustainable economic expansion and diversification, otherwise known as SEED, which is a part of the Sustainable Island State Agenda. Ebony, in the Prime Minister's address last evening, he spoke about the recently concluded St. Kitts Music Festival in terms of how it benefited the local economy, people coming to our shores because of the festival, and I saw some very positive numbers. And it stood out to me because he noted that there was a 74% increase from 2024 in terms of the people who came to St. Kitts and Nevis for the St. Kitts Music Festival. I'm seeing numbers, some 7,000 plus for ear and 300 for sea. By sea. Okay. So in total, about 8,075 people came to St. Kitts and Nevis for the St. Kitts Music Festival. And for me, it may seem to some, oh, that's just numbers. That's just numbers. But for me, it justifies the importance. It justifies why the St. Kitts Music Festival continues to be relevant. It justifies why it is something that needs to continue. Of course, there have been, I don't know what to call it, comments, questions, concerns about the price tag for some of the artists that we have had in recent times and very recently. But when you can hear numbers of, you could say close to 9,000 people coming because of a festival, that in and of itself speaks about the strength of the St. Kitts Music Festival, because you're talking about hotels, restaurants, rentals, small business operators,
food shops,
right,
everything,
all benefiting from the staging of this event. The purpose of the St. Kitts Music Festival was to bring about some economic activity around what is traditionally the slow period. Your take?
Well, I mean, you're correct in what you say. The thing is, now we've moved away, and we've heard Honorable Henderson Marshall often say that the goal is to move away from the seasonal thing and to have a year-round tourism industry. And so that has been done. What I admired about the music festival this year. And the price tag is always going to be an issue. I worked in entertainment. I managed Burning Flames and other bands for a great part of my youth. So I know what I'm talking about. Bands that are relevant, that people want to see, which are going to attract the crowds that we saw this year. Go cost you.
Yes.
But then you have to do the cost benefit analysis. Like, is it worth it for me to bring this person versus all these people versus what I am going to get out of it? And although the figures are not out, I'm hearing an unofficial number being bandied about of about $8 million that was generated in revenue just off of the music festival alone. This doesn't have anything to do with spin-off into the rest of the economy, just what was directly generated from the music festival. But that is unofficial. What I can tell you is that based on the numbers, and I don't think all of these were in the speech last night, but we will have the information available from tourism. We actually had 711 passengers coming in through RLB. I don't have the figures for the seaports, but through RLB is 7,711. That represented an increase of 3,718 people.
For seaports, it is 364.
And so when we talk about that 364, be clear, these are people now who would be coming in on yachts, people who would have come across from Antigua, because there are a great number of people who came, Montserrat, St. Martin, Saba, Statia. All of these neighboring islands where we had a lot of people coming in from, and to think that 300 and odd people got on a boat to come here for the music festival is significant in and of itself. So let's not underplay that. And it speaks to the efficiency of the immigration services as well, because I kind of want to segue into that. You and I were at the press conference when the ETA was announced. I didn't attend the opening, but I believe you did. And we see this and we wonder, well, like, what's the point? We've invested all this money and infrastructure resources into development. But this is why it's important, because we have more figures. During the period of time that the ETA has been set up, it's just a little bit over a month now, I would want to believe, maybe about 5 or 6 weeks, 21,138 people have been processed. That is significant. It speeds up the time. I heard a lot of people talking about how quick and easy the process was to come through the airport, the fact that despite the numerous flights that were, because let me tell you, the airport was carnival.
It was.
Up there was mass.
I saw someone post on social media how seamless it was.
Absolutely. And this was not just for those persons coming from North America and Europe. It also applied to people who were coming from within the region, because there was some concern, and you'll remember that we raised the question at a round table, well, what about people from CARICOM and OICS who are traveling? Because the impression was we still go through lines because we're not going through that verification process, but because we're not meeting up with all these other people, the agents are free to do their job. And it's not that they don't have work to do, but it's useful, in addition to which it has also proven itself to be a revenue earner. There's $7,000 in revenue US dollars since the ET has been up. That's been generated. I mean, when you ever make $107,000 in 5 weeks.
So we can almost say it's paying off. It's paying for itself.
Precisely. You know? And because we had that system in place, it leads to the tourists who visited saying, well, I had a great time during the music festival, which was a peak period for us. Now, as it relates to the music festival, what I was also happy to see is that, like I said, thoughtfulness in terms of the lineup. You have now attracted, because there were very many people here. I know the Antigua crew, for example, that comes over every year, and there were a lot of people who came to the music festival who don't generally come, because the lineup was diverse, it was fresh, it was relevant. So I'm hoping to see that continues. But I also earlier before the break spoke about as well the importance of the creatives, and we saw a lot of our local talent having that world stage. You're on stage with Cartel, you're on stage with people like Jennifer Hudson. It's amazing that you have this sort of exposure, you're making these connections, and so it does something for the industry here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm totally stoked about it.
I think it was Romaine Virgo, I stand to be corrected, who made the point that where else in the world do you get to share the same stage with Jennifer Hudson? With these
as an up and coming artist.
Right, you know, that is truly amazing.
And the thing is, with the music festival here, it's not like some other festivals in the region where people don't turn up until the big acts come on. The park was packed from beginning to end.
That is true.
Because I think my son came home from Jennifer Hudson that night at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the show was still going on. He just born, but his body broke down. He couldn't keep up. So, it was really something for everybody. The people who turned out were so varied, and I haven't heard a single soul complain about it. So I absolutely have to give credit there. But then it also speaks to the infrastructure that we have, because another great thing that I heard coming out of that music festival and the conversation and chatter about it, the roads, the infrastructure, how great the traveling experience was, the signage. People were talking about these things, and I think it's about $50 million we've invested in improving the road infrastructure.
I think it's 80.
80?
80 million.
Where are we?
That's the number I got here. Approximately 80 million committed to
well, there
road
you
works,
go. There you go.
including the St. Peter's Corridor expansion, the F.D. Williams Highway, and so on. So you're seeing where these things are now paying for
Absolutely,
themselves.
80 million easy dollars.
Yeah, these things are paying for themselves. You mentioned the visitors who came and they spoke about how easy it was to get through immigration. That is encouraging. If I'm going to an island or a country and the process for me to get through immigration is easy, I'm inclined to go back.
Absolutely.
And I'm inclined to bring my family and my friends. And I'm coming back for St. Kitts Music Festival, recently concluded Mango Festival, and these different things that are happening. So that for me is major, absolutely amazing.
And it speaks to the security and safety of the country. We battled with issues related to our safety and security in St. Kitts and Nevis for some time, but a new approach has been taken, spearheaded by the Prime Minister, this public health approach to citizen security, a new concept that was introduced in the latter part of 2024, and it's yielding results. Homicides are down, people feel safer coming to the country, and again, the fact that we have 7,700 people by air alone, over 8,000 people who came into the Federation, that's more work on our tiny police force and security services to take on for that period of time, and we did an excellent job of that. So I really want to commend not only the police, but the Defense Force and other security forces who would have ensured that we had a safe music festival, and in turn that the tourists who came in here and the locals who live here could equally enjoy themselves and feel comfort.
Well, let me say lastly, and that kudos to the St. Kitts Tourism Authority and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis by extension for putting on what I believe was an amazing staging of the St. Kitts Music Festival, and we are seeing where it is paying for itself, it is boosting the local economy, and it is giving people from near and far, from our source markets, the UK, Canada, the USA, a reason to come to St. Kitts, and not just for the festival, but to experience what we have to offer. But shifting the conversation to road infrastructure upgrades, we mentioned approximately $80 million invested to improve road works. I am seeing this as positively changing daily lives, like how we go about each day, how we commute to work, to school, to play, whatever the case is. Of course, there are people who would care more or who would pay more attention to the bread and butter issues in terms of wages and employment and these different things and so on. But I don't believe it is something that we ought to take for granted in terms of the infrastructure, because we hear people complain all the time about the condition of roads over the years in St. Kitts and Nevis, potholes and all of these different things, which in turn would put you, the small man, to spend more money. It is not good when I'm driving my car and I'm hitting 17 potholes in less than 10 minutes.
Your whole front end gone. So your mechanic is going to love
everything
you.
mash up. And it puts you to spend more money. And so, people like to say, well, why am I paying the road tax? Why am I going down to Inland Revenue and giving them hundreds of dollars if we're not getting good roads? We are now getting better roads.
Arguably, arguably the best roads in the OECS. Because I've been around and I'm telling you, we still have, like the little village roads and so on, we still have some work to do there. But the main highways that connect to the nation, we don't have an issue with those roads. And it is more than this. I think sometimes it is useful if we look at, not that affects our experience at home, but sometimes when you look at how it is in other places, it changes your view of how things are. Let me tell you one of the things that I admire about our infrastructural upkeep as it pertains to roads. It is this: if somebody come and dig up a hole today, or they had to lay a pipe or something like that, it's not going to stay there indefinitely after that was done, so that the entire roadway goes bad and a little bump turn into a ditch. That is what happens in other places. We are fortunate here because we have cones and so put up to even alert you that there is some danger ahead. Some other places, you hold your heart in your hand and hope for the best. You know what I'm saying? So there is thought that goes into, and I recently would have hosted the biannual update for public infrastructure, Minister Maynard's ministries, Communist Maynard's. And it was refreshing to hear that it is a whole strategy that is laid out, well thought out for maintenance, upkeep, and ongoing improvement when it's related to our road infrastructure. Now, one of the things that I know we've both asked about, as well as our colleagues in various fora, is the fact that we need to make sure that our roads are well marked, that they're well lit. And it is refreshing to know that these are considerations, because that's part of the infrastructural development, and that is being done. I would encourage persons to use these roadways responsibly, because if we're having a real conversation, that is one of the negative spin-offs of these nice roads that we have. People are speeding. People are not using the roads responsibly. So even at the police press conference the other day, I was very glad to hear that they're doing training for breathalyzers to be used to control, because we have this Caribbean culture. We go out and we drink and then we jump behind the wheel. Is almost a cultural part of our thing to go out and drink and drive. We know we're not supposed to do it, and then nobody ever thinks that that one drink could be the one that causes, maybe not my life, cost my life, but somebody else's. Right. So we got to be responsible with the gifts that we have and the things that we work for, because at the end of the day, the government is there using the tax money that we give them a job to use to use on our behalf.
Going back to what you mentioned, maintenance, and I had this conversation yesterday in terms of government infrastructure. There's a budget to construct, but there isn't a plan or a budget to maintain. And so it's good to hear that that is where the conversation is going, not just the construction, but the maintenance of projects. But I want to shift the conversation to agriculture and food security, which is a bread and butter issue. People speak very passionately, and understandably so, on agriculture and food security. When you look at our food import bill, not just for our federation, but for the region, it is exorbitant. It is large.
It exposes us to a lot of risk.
Yeah. And it is unfortunate. I see where the work is being done in St. Kitts and Nevis in particular. There's a lot more that can be done, and we have a lot more to do. But it is still important for us to make note of the progress that we have made. In the address last evening, the Prime Minister mentioned, I believe, some 19.6 million for the fisheries industry in terms of revenue. He mentioned the Tabasco pepper project and goals to reduce the food import bill by 25% by, I think, by 2027, thereabout. So we're seeing where the work is being done and the effort is being made. For me, though, Ebony, I have always said, and this is not giving the government a free pass, I have always said the government cannot do it alone. It takes all of us. When you mentioned citizen security in terms of the positive results that we have been seeing, it took an all-of-society approach. And so if you're talking about food security and reducing the food import bill, it also has to be an all-of-society approach.
So the thing is with that, it requires public buy-in. We have to get people to understand why it's important to them. You're right in the sense that it's easy to say this, but it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. A large part of my work now is in public relations and coming up with those sorts of ideas and strategies that make people understand, to connect. That essentially, when you break it down, that's what it is. You want the message to resonate and connect. We grew up with this, and when I say we, people your generation to mine grew up with this move away from agriculture, because working with your hands in the soil and in the sun was somehow a reminder of our past that we wanted to disassociate from. But in doing so, we stopped cultivating our little backyard gardens. So we couldn't go and pull up some herbs in the back. We couldn't go and pull up 2 little lettuce or something, had a little cabbage patch to help feed ourselves, to be able to go across the street by the neighbor who might have a papaya tree, and we get a papaya ripe or green from them, and we have that as part of a meal. It also encouraged healthy eating.
Yes.
So we need to go back to that somehow and really sell to people why it's important to them. When you think about $200 million that we expend to import food,
Wild.
it is wild. Because think about if we can even have that. It is always so disturbing to me when I see the ships come in every week with the containers full of food from overseas, and some of the things that are coming in,
We can grow them here.
we can grow them here.
We can grow them here.
So why do we continue to do that, and why don't we see that as a problem? During COVID, when fresh fruits and vegetables, because of the supply chain interruptions that took place, I thought that for most people that would have been a wake-up call. For some people, it was. We speak flippantly about the possibility of a World War III. I think the new unrest in the Middle East is driving it home even more to most of us. Because in the Caribbean, we're very privileged. We are not in the direct line of fire of anybody. We're peaceful with everybody. All we do down here is work hard, go on vacation, and we go on music festivals and party in the summer.
Yeah.
That's what we work for in the Caribbean. Give our children a good education, have a great home. So these conflicts elsewhere don't impact, but you know where they will? When those oil lords over in the Middle East start holding back their oil, it goes back to energy efficiency again. And the boats are not traveling, and we can't get things in. And inflation is already high now. It shoots through the roof. What do we do then when we have little faces looking at us that we can't feed? And this foolishness about I don't eat this and I don't want that, we have to move away from it. Embrace what is part of our culture. Go back to eating healthy, grow something. I don't like worms, so I will support people who grow something, do something for yourself, and change your lifestyles, because it goes back to we having these beautiful hospitals. We don't want to overburn them with things like our NCDs, non-communicable diseases, hypertension, blood sugar. Why do we need to deal with these things when we can change the way we live and we have it available right here? We have fertile soil, use it.
As you mentioned, inflation, I want us to go to the budget boost wallet and the increase in the minimum wage, but we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Thereafter, we can open the phone lines to hear from our listeners as well.
Healthwise on ZIZ TV, Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Hosted by Dr. Monique Lescott, Dr. Jolette Woodley, and Dr. Patrice Lawrence.
Make me some music.
Listen, you hear that song? It's Nostalgia on ZIZ Radio from 1 to 3 in the afternoon on Thursdays. On Nostalgia, everybody has a good voice, so relax and go in the zone with us. Get your songbook, look in the index, find the song that is playing, and sing along. Join ZIZ Radio every Thursday from 1 to 3 for Nostalgia. It's music to soothe you right where it hurts. ZIZ Radio, touching you with variety and style.
Watch the creeper. Look out! Look out! This is it! Something new, something fresh, something exciting! Jump off show on ZIZ Radio with the man Chico. Yo! Every Monday to Thursday.
Welcome back to The Edge here on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I'm Devonne Cornelius, and thank you for joining me. The phone lines are open now, so we are taking your calls at 465-1977 or 1903. But in the meantime, Ebony, let's continue the conversation looking at the Budget Boost wallet, which was launched. It was announced in December 2024 and launched in January of 2025. Individuals learning less than $5,000 received $250 via the JAD Cash app, and it was for them to purchase essential items. Throughout that period, I heard from the Prime Minister's special advisor that there were some figures in terms of how it was performing. Most of the JAD was being spent on food. So people were going to Best Buy, Rams, Value Mart, and these places, and they were buying food, which was the intended purpose of the JAD. Then coming in secondary, I believe it was electricity. People were paying their Skelec and Nevlec and water department in both St. Kitts and Nevis, and then a few payments were made to NHLDC, Nevis, and NHC in St. Kitts. And so we're seeing where the government allocated, I believe, some $30 million for this initiative, and it achieved the goal.
Well, they're saying between that and the VAT reduction, which was 7 to 13 during the same period, we're looking at about $40 million in relief, EC, which is good. It's good. I am waiting to see whether, because you have 6 months of data in your hands now, it would be nice to know if any of this is sustainable. If perhaps in some form it's going to be continued, because clearly it brought benefits to some homes. Perhaps it may not be 5,000 or less. They might drop the threshold to 3,000, but clearly if it was supported, there is a need for it. And I'm conflicted sometimes about things like that, because I understand that they're homes to which it brings great benefit. At the same time, we don't want to develop a welfare culture. So I support these programs for those who are most in need, and I would hope that this is data that is going to be used to guide now future programs that can benefit people who need that help the most. With respect to the VAT now, there was always the conversation as to whether or not shop owners were going to pass on that savings to consumers. But then you were hearing the merchants saying, well, even if you do that, we can't control the actual price of an item. So when we put on our profit margin in it, even if we drop it, you as the consumer may not see it. Now, if for 6 months you could forego the 4% on these things, I am again hoping and looking to see whether or not this is something that the government will consider in respect of lowering the VAT, making some adjustment to it, which would have long-term benefit for the people. But I am appreciative and grateful for any attempt that is ever made to improve the lives of the general public, because there are a lot of people among us, whether or not we choose to believe it or not. We're doing well, but there are those of us who are not doing so well.
I too am hoping that the data derived from this initiative would be put to good use. We're seeing where the help is most needed. I mentioned food. The last couple of figures I got, and this was in the middle of the program, about $4 million already spent on food from households. And so I'm hoping that the relevant authorities would use this data and figure out how they're going to continue to assist those who are most vulnerable, or pull them out of that position.
Right.
Because you made the point about a welfare state. So while it may sound good and it may be good for this to continue, you don't
want people to become dependent on it.
You don't want a case where
it should be a safety net.
Yes. But not every month you know for a fact you're going to get this, and so lose that sense of independence, because every month you're going to get this
right.
allowance from the government or whatever you would want to call it.
But that's why I'm glad to hear, for example, the conversation surrounding employment and the increase in jobs and interest in job registrations. Again, I would assume that this is through the Labor Department, and if that is what they're registering there, it means that society-wide it might be a little bit higher than that. If we can provide an environment, and it goes back to what we discussed in the very beginning, construction starts, there are so many spin-offs to all these developments that will take place. Hotels, we have the Ritz-Carlton, that should be coming on stream shortly. We were told that the MOU was already signed on that project for it to proceed. So I am Safe Harbor. So Christoph, Harbour is going to be open. Once jobs are there, you'll find that these statistics improve even more. And the need for programs like this, because this comes from our taxpayer dollars, it comes from our citizenship by investment funds. I'm assuming those would be the two sources of revenue for a program like this.
Right.
So we want to ensure that we're not just depleting without replenishing. So I am happy to hear that there is an increase in persons searching for jobs and registering for employment. I would love to see now that there is booming employment. Ideally what I want to hear that we don't have enough people to work. That's what I would like to hear, ideally.
Right.
We have so much work and not enough people to do it. That would make me incredibly happy.
And the phone lines are open, so we're taking your calls, 465-1977, 1903. We have a caller. Okay, we lost that one. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Good morning. Caller, you're on the air. Good morning. Okay, I'm not getting that caller.
So we want to talk about the minimum wage increases.
We have a caller?
Okay, go ahead. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
I'm not sure if your guest is there as a PR person or a member of the press, the media, but irrespective, right? I think one should have a very healthy skepticism of government announcement based on past record. Okay? It's one thing to say that something is on the horizon and to be hopeful, but it's another thing to have them actually start on the ground. Okay? And at the same time, I mean, giving excuses for potholes staying visible for weeks and weeks, I don't think is good for the media, right? They should be holding the relevant departments accountable. Everyone drives across the Cricket Bay Road and the bypass road, King Collins bypass road, and we know that there have been potholes there for weeks on end. Okay, so what I'm saying is, let's of course highlight the good things, okay, but don't become too complacent when there are so many issues to be dealt with. And I'm glad that the point was made about the BBW, that we don't want to become a welfare state, because really, when you think of it, 22,000 people on the government dole is in fact a welfare state, right? And it's probably not sustainable. If it is sustainable, if the government has money, then it means we're overtaxed, and they should be doing something else with the economy, the money that they've been collecting, or reduce the taxes. Okay, I just wanted to make those points. Yes, it's good, but when you paint a picture of everything being rosy when it's not, people become kind of disillusioned, right? And most people would say, just like geothermal, for instance, that we've been hearing about for decades and decades, well, I believe it when it happens. I'll wait and see, kind of thing. Okay? That's my input.
Thank you so much.
Right,
I will
thank
answer
you.
first, if you don't mind. I'm here in my own capacity as Ebony Brandon. When I speak for myself. I'm not public relations to anybody because I don't work for the government. I am speaking as a taxpayer in this country. What I see and I observe, and I don't always agree because I was the one who said, although I'm happy about the BBW, may want a welfare state, because welfare state means my tax money paying for people who don't want to work, and that's what we don't want. As to the point made about being a welfare state because the government employs 22,000 people, I would ask you to in turn go and look at other OECS countries and see if the government in most of them, if not all, I would dare say, is not the largest employer. That is what happens in these islands. People have to work and government has to run. So we employ people to do the work. Now, should government be the largest employer all the time? Absolutely not. But we need to create the environment, which is what I just said, where we have people who can come in and run businesses that work, which reduces the reliance on the government as the largest employer. The public sector ideally should not be the largest employer. But people have to work, and it's the government's job to ensure that people can live. So if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do.
Thank you, Ebony. Let's go back to the phone lines and take this call. The caller, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Mr. Cornelius, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. You have about a minute, so go ahead quickly. Pose your question or comment.
Sure. It's not a question I have. It's something I've heard. And I just wanted to at least use a definition of what Ms. Brandon said. It is good that we all are happy that they're now training for breathalyzer application on the road of people who, intoxicated, obviously have drink rum, so to speak. But she mentioned about the Caribbean culture of people who drink. A culture, in my view, is something that people do as a practice over a number of years. That's not a culture. It is not a Caribbean culture. It's an irresponsibility. That's all I wanted to say. I just correct what she said. It's not a culture. That's an irresponsibility. Have a good day, sir. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, caller. Let's take this call. You're on the air. Good morning.
Devonne, good morning.
Yes, how you doing?
And good morning to the good people. I think it's a Nevis. I think this Brandon is out she place. All who get in handout from think it. And this is the money. You come here and get employment. You don't talk so. You're out your damn place.
Caller. We have another call on the line? Okay, let's take this final call because we're running out of time. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead quickly.
Good morning, Mr. Cornelius.
Yes, good morning.
I heard you all mention we move away from agriculture because it reminds us of slavery. But look at it. When we were deep into agriculture, we paid for 51% share in cable and wireless out of agriculture and the Bradshaw. We was able to buy our sugar lands. We knew nothing about Taiwanese giving us donation. We knew nothing about sales of our passport, and that is what made us so sufficient. Right now, agriculture is supposed to be the main step. This St. Kitts Nevis, and right now, the discussion had this morning, it was useless. Because, for example, how come Tabasco Company could come here and get so much acres of our land when the farmers have been, me for example, have been pressured from 2020?
Spring it, let it. All right, caller, thank you for your contribution to the program. It is 11:57. I wanted to add that the role of the media is not to just criticize, but to scrutinize. And so for me, that means holding the leaders accountable, but at the same time highlighting progress and explaining policies and these different things and so on. But Ebony, we have just 2 minutes left, so I'll let you give your take in wrapping up from the callers and the entire conversation.
Okay. I'm sorry we didn't have more time to take calls. To that, it sounded like a lady. I'm sorry you feel that way about me. And yes, I'm a transplant. I came here from Antigua, but I've been here for 11 years. My son went to school here. I'm not going away. So wherever in this country me feel like to talk about, I'm going to talk about it. Take it to Jesus in prayer. First of all. Second thing is, when I say a culture, as it speaks to the gentleman, culture is not what we always think about, song and dance and folk music and traditions. A culture of anything is anything that becomes ingrained into what you do over a period of time. And I don't think any of us can really sit down here and say that we are not in the custom and habit of on a Friday afternoon going and having a few beers and then driving home. We have a culture of doing it. Is it a good culture? Not necessarily. It's the same way that we have adopted and assimilated things from Jamaica, North America, elsewhere. Is all of it good? Not necessarily. but it's become a part of what we are. The thing is to find that balance and in terms of how we can make it work. Now, if I see, as you said, something good, whether I am here as journalist or a member of the public, nobody of consequence, guess what? It is important to say what I see. So if I see good, I'm going to say good. And we highlighted a lot of good. I'm giving my take and opinion on, and as were you, on what we heard last night. Are there areas for improvement? I said yes. We're giving them the benefit of the doubt because, as in the case of the hospital, geothermal and that sort of thing, I can understand if people have some skepticism because of what was done in the past. But this administration is not an administration from the past. This is not just a Labour administration. It is a Labour administration on the new leadership. And I am not here to bat for Labour Party, but I am willing to give fresh new leadership an opportunity. They've been there for 3 years, just about come August, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt based on what I'm seeing, that they're moving in the right direction. Certainly a lot more to do, absolutely. Mistakes being made, we all make them. My thing is, how do we move forward? And so, asking me what I thought about the speech last night, progressive, promising. But as I also said earlier, we will continue to hold the Prime Minister and his administration's feet to the fire. They don't get a free pass because they said, we did some things. We want to see what you continue to do.
Ebony, thank you so much. It is 12, but for me, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic in terms of what the Prime Minister laid out last evening for St. Kitts and Nevis's progress and the Sustainable Island State agenda. I think it is a step in the right direction because it addresses a number of the issues and challenges that we have faced over the years as a country. Now that we're seeing that these things are being seriously tackled is commendable. I'm not going to say just because they're doing them, then we shouldn't say anything else. But as you rightly mentioned, we have a responsibility to continue to hold them accountable and to ensure that these things are done for the people, by the people, with the people, front and center. You've been listening to The Edge here on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I've been your host, Devonne Cornelius, and Ebony Brandon was here with me. Thank you so much for joining. Coming up now is our Midday Newscast.
ZIZ Radio, the pulse of the Eastern Caribbean. Proudly united, leading, serving, and entertaining.